Are all the crazy stories about what went on with Stevie Nicks and all that behind the scenes, are all those true, or did you get to hang out with them? Did you get to go on the tour bus and all that?
Got to meet all of them and speak with all of them, but we traveled separately. You know, they traveled first class in style, and we traveled in huge leased vehicles that we would just jump into, 5 or 6 of us at a time, and just go from one city to the next. So we were in these big cars, and as far as getting to know them and learning about the rumors that were going on, and rumors is a good word for Fleetwood Mac, isn't it?
Welcome to Mosaic Minds, the podcast where every episode is a colorful blend of perspectives, ideas, and conversation. Each week, our diverse team of hosts brings their unique backgrounds, experiences, and interests to the table. Mosaic Minds is your invitation to join the conversation to see the world through a kaleidoscope of viewpoints. So grab a seat, tune in, and let the mosaic unfold before you.
Welcome back to another episode of Mosaic Minds Podcast. I'm Nick, and this is Jason. And today we are thrilled to bring you a guest who's not just about food, he's about making life delicious. From cooking for Hollywood's elite to pioneering culinary tours in Hawaii, Matthew Gray has done it all. He's the host of 50 Tastes of Gray, named one of the top food podcasts of the year, and a true tastemaker in every sense of the word. Whether he's crafting gourmet dishes, elevating wellness through food, or turning interviews into art form, Matthew's passion for flavor and storytelling is unmatched. So go ahead and grab a snack and let's get started with Matthew Gray. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Hello, hi everybody. How you doing?
Yeah, coming to us from Hawaii.
That's right. Can't you tell by my background?
Yeah, right.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, and we're in Indianapolis, so we just got slammed by snow this past week.
Oh, I feel for you. You know, one of the saddest days I ever had was in the Indianapolis Holiday Inn a million years ago when I was on the road with the rock and rollers. It was a Thanksgiving, and I spent it inside the coffee shop of whatever hotel I was in, Motel 6 or whatever. No, it was just Thanksgiving, and I was all alone. There was nobody there, no loved ones, you know.
I know I did a little intro on you, but go ahead if you could and just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you started, how you got to where you are, and what you're doing now.
Wow. You know, first of all, your intro was great. I wish I could live up to all of that, so thank you so much, Nick. That was pretty
Absolutely.
Awesome. But I'm always curious to hear how others describe me based on their research. So what was it that you and Jason found interesting about me or my background that you wanted to explore?
The one word that I would say is eclectic. I really like the fact that you're diversified in your skill set, and the Mosaic Minds is kind of merging multiple topics and forums together, and I think you've done a phenomenal job with that. I'd kind of be interested, because that's my era of music. I absolutely love it. You know, born in the late 70s, I'm a little too early for some of that music, but talk to me a little bit about what it was like traveling and kind of how your life was maybe on the road with some of the famous bands. Name drop them if you don't mind for our audience, just to kind of educate them. So that's hopefully a loaded question for you, but that's where I'd like to start if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, having a liberal arts background like mine and being highly unemployable allowed me to do all of these very colorful things throughout my life. So one of the things that kind of got me kick-started was while I was still in high school, my neighbors who were across the street offered me to go out on the road with the Eagles on their Hotel California tour in a merchandising capacity. So I said, well, that sounds great. I'd love to do that, but I'm going to have to get permission from my parents. So I asked my folks, could I go on the road with the Eagles? And they said, sure, go have fun, live your life, you know, you're a young man and all that. So I left school early, went on the road with the Eagles on their Hotel California tour, all over the country, selling merchandise. So anything that was licensed merchandise, I was a part of that crew and a part of that group. One thing led to another, the Eagles and the Fleetwood Mac and the Pink Floyd and all of the bands of the day, and I had the most outrageous experiences with them, getting to travel and experience over 1,000 concerts in my day. And all my friends back home, Jason, were working in fast food or, that kind of thing. They were living that life, which is pretty standard American stuff. And I was doing the rock and roll, drug, sex, and rock and roll kind of thing.
Wow. Out of the bands you mentioned, I think most people would probably talk mostly about, the Eagles or Pink Floyd, but man, I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. So I have to ask, are all the crazy stories about what went on with Stevie Nicks and all that behind the scenes, are all those true? Or did you get to hang out with them? Did you get to go on the tour bus and all that?
Got to meet all of them and speak with all of them, but we traveled separately. They traveled first class in style, and we traveled in huge leased vehicles that we would just jump into, 5 or 6 of us at a time, and just go from one city to the next. So we were in these big cars, and as far as getting to know them and learning about the rumors that were going on, and rumors is a good word for Fleetwood Mac, isn't it? But yeah, we heard some stuff, behind the scenes and the things that kind of spread when you're in close proximity to people.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, when an artist goes on stage, and I'm just throwing it out there, but they're in Detroit tonight and they say they're in Philadelphia, right? Because it's almost a confusion because there's so much going on. There's so much traveling. Talk to me about what a week or 10 days look like when you're in 4 different cities, traveling until 3:00 in the morning. I'm going to stop there because I didn't live that life, but talk to us a little bit about what a week or 2 look like, kind of a blur, if you will, but I'm going to let you take that question from there.
Well, because I wasn't a performer, it wasn't that difficult. I didn't really have to know where I was as long as I was in the right place. So when I wasn't there addressing the crowd saying, "Hello, Philadelphia," when I was in Detroit. So I didn't have to experience that kind of thing. As long as I could get from point A to point B and make sure my guys and my crew and my merchandise was all in place and we were able to work the deals and the percentages with the venues, then everything was good. So we would do a show or 2 if they were in town during the 2 days in a row, but if they weren't, we would be hopping into the car after we packed up our gear, getting ready to go to the next place.
What was one of your most memorable moments with any of the bands that you can talk about?
I helped Joe Walsh's grandma get to him. So she was lost and wandering around, and so I made the connections, and so that's kind of memorable for one of those kind of things that I can speak about.
Yeah, and you get to play a hero,
Yeah. So that paid off well.
The music's a large industry, and I don't have a lot of experience, but my claim to fame is when I was down working out playing basketball, I was kind of an informal roadie for about an hour because I was the only person that was helping them with Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf.
Well,
so
you're
I got
a strapping
to hang out with him
guy
for 2 or 3 hours.
So you moving stuff? Is that what you were doing?
Exactly. I call myself an informal roadie. All it was, "Hey kid, come over here." And I'm like looking at him, and after talking with them, they're like, "Oh yeah, these songs and stuff." And they were actually super cool, just nice guys. Talked to them for probably 2 hours while they were setting up for a concert. So let me ask you this. Let's not talk venue. Let's talk cities. What cities, regardless of who you were traveling with, what's maybe a top 3 city? Go maybe third favorite, second favorite, favorite city.
New York City always leads the list. Madison, Wisconsin is an awesome place and maybe off the beaten track for a lot of people. That is a great city. The people are fantastic and warm and fun. Let's see, city number 3, San Francisco, I would have to say, another great big city. Plenty to do. Food is fantastic, and that's probably why New York is at the top. And San Francisco in number 3 because you can always get just fantastic food at a whim.
We're going to segue into the food, but one of the famous things that I did in San Francisco was, I believe, Fisherman's Wharf. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I had the bread bowl with the chowder in it. So
Did
I remember
eating
the chowder. Oh, it was phenomenal. You ate the chowder, and then you were still hungry, and you had the bread for later. I mean, it was a great city. Very. I liked how the elevation changed within the city. So
Right.
it was almost like 2 cities, and then the Golden Gate Bridge. That was just a phenomenal setting. Just great people. The vibe was just kind of relaxed. Everybody, was having a good time.
San Francisco is small. It's only a 5-mile square. It's only 25 square miles of the metro. So it is a beautiful city, not unlike here in Honolulu or Hong Kong, where you have all of these hills and water and things like that. But getting back to your clam chowder in the bread bowl, one of my pet peeves. And that is because they scoop out a big, beautiful sourdough and then they fill it up with the clam chowder, which does two things that I don't like. One, the bread absorbs the soup and you end up getting less soup. And then you end up with soggy sourdough. Who wants that? That's a crime against humanity.
And what do they do with that sourdough that they scoop out?
What do they do with the bread that's scooped out? They probably make dumplings or they add it to some other dishes that might need fillings. But the question really is, what do you do with that sourdough once you finish the soup out of it? And you don't want to eat soggy sourdough.
No.
With me liking to eat, I just saved it and ate it later. I'm sure that was probably the wrong move, but I agree with you. You're absolutely right, being a food critic. Let's segue a little bit from your music to your current situation there. And I think it's exciting that you've had success and climbed the apex in the career, some of the biggest names, in rock and roll, in my opinion. I think in most people's opinion. Talk to me about climbing that stratospheric level with what you're currently doing and how the two maybe have a similarity kind of in the middle.
Well, where I went from the rock and roll days, being on the road with them, is when I went back to Los Angeles, where I was living at that time. I hired a chef's agent, and I asked that agent to get me jobs working for the industry. And so I started cooking for a lot of those people after doing the touring. And so that was kind of a natural extension of my prior life of being on the road. I was an old man already when I got back to LA. I was like 20 years old or 21. I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And so I started cooking for those folks, many of the Hollywood types, and the producer of Flashdance, Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop. His name was Don Simpson. Robin Williams almost set his house on fire. A lot of very interesting people. Tommy Lee and Heather Locklear, James Coburn, the In Like Flint actor. So there are a lot of people. You want to meet a name drop. Normally I don't do that.
Now, how many people do you have on speed dial right now?
Speed dial's a whole different world. That's like two worlds and two lives ago, right?
It's just for the buzzword,
I think I can judge you quickly with you don't have a bad day. You're just upbeat, you're positive, you're funny, you're engaging. What's maybe a funny story? You don't even have to mention the person, but just name an A-lister or whatever of, just having that interaction and having a real life moment with them as opposed to a real regimented, hey, this is what has to be done type task or day.
I wish I never had a bad day, Jason, but the absolute truth is that I've had plenty. Now, as far as a bad experience, the almost setting Robin Williams' house on fire was a fun one because there I was showing off, there in the kitchen watching me, which was atypical. And I wanted to flambe filet
I was going to say, get some flambe going on.
That's it. So big shot over here. Pours the cognac in the pan and it explodes and singes my eyebrows and sets the curtains on fire behind me. It was like a scene, a 5-alarm kind of scene. And so the police came and the fire brigade and all that. And I was freaking out, sweating bullets, scared, thought this was going to kill my reputation and my business and all that. And Robin Williams was just kind of laughing and giggling and taking it all in and just it was okay. And, these things happen and all that. And I was going, wow, that was too much. But I had to clean up and then get back into it after everything was said and done.
What a great guy. I've never heard anybody say anything negative about Robin Williams. That was a tough one. Sure.
Definitely. God rest his soul. A lot of the comedians that I've met over the years, like Dan Aykroyd, Robin Williams, they're very cerebral types and they're usually quite quiet. So that was a rare moment, I think, for him to be out with, the hired help. And it was great being able to connect with all these people over those years.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. Like the reason a lot of people want to make someone laugh is because they are craving, positivity and they're craving that kind of energy. So I think that a lot of comedians are probably, like you said, very cerebral. Let's talk a little bit about your being a food critic and doing the culinary thing. You've cooked for the Hollywood royalty. We're talking about some of those different things. Do you have any behind the scenes experiences? I know you mentioned the thing with Robin Williams and, about almost burning down his house. And that's definitely something it's definitely a story for sure. Any other stories like that?
There are a lot of stories like that. I had a business while still in Los Angeles called Pamper and Dine, which created and combined massage and fine dining in our clients' homes.
All the senses.
That my partner was a masseuse. I'm the chef. We'd go into people's homes all over the Southern California area. She'd massage, the husband and the wife or the partners or whatever you want to call them upstairs in their bedroom. I would be in the kitchen preparing them a pre-customized gourmet seduction dinner. And one thing led to another, and people are in their robes all the time. Needed to stay as professional as possible, but things happen from time to time. Like I said, I was a young man and I was unattached. And so, things can happen when you're visiting folks and they're like all kind of cozy and in their bathrobes.
No, yeah. Was this, you said this was in California or?
Yep.
In California? Okay.
This was in LA. It was one of my crazy food combining businesses. I've had a lot of entrepreneurial ventures that combine some sort of aspect of life along with food. So this just happened to be massage and fine dining in our clients' homes.
Anything that like combines the senses. Like, have you ever seen those things? You've probably done it, but where you go into the completely dark room, the waiters or whatever have the night vision goggles and you eat the food in complete darkness just to kind of like stimulate the senses, so anything like that's very fascinating.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That I'm not a fan of, although I have tried it. I have to try everything, but I'm not a fan of that because I think culinary-wise, it's so important to be able to look the person you're seated across from in their eyes. So if you're not seeing that person, you're not seeing the food on the plate, and you're not able to take in the visual aspects that life is enjoying to be able to put out there for you, I think it kind of cuts off the ability to really refine your senses according to how I feel. I like having everything at a moment's touch to be able to enjoy seeing you and seeing my food. So
yeah, and that's
cooking
important.
In the dark.
That's why everybody wants to put. Yeah, that's why everybody wants to put their food pictures on Instagram. Like the presentation. That's half of being a chef. That's half of it.
So
right,
being there,
exactly.
So being in there, Hawaii, from a cuisine standpoint, how does that accentuate kind of what you do? Educate the audience at large, maybe, of what the typical cuisine is there in Hawaii.
Well, becoming a food critic was a lot of fun and a lot of hard work. It took me years and years. After I moved to Honolulu in '93, I kept hounding the biggest paper, Hawaii, to give me a job as their restaurant critic. But there was a guy who had been there for many, many years. But eventually I scored the job. I beat out, a couple thousand people who were nationwide all over the country who wanted the gig. So I was really fortunate in that, and learning about the Hawaiian food and the culture and the architecture and the people and all the flavors and the history and all that was something I was able to learn while being a journalist for the paper. And I was able to put that into my reviews. So my reviews are more about the entire experience. Once again, like Nick was saying, the people aspect, the flavor aspect, and all the things that you might be able to really take advantage of as a hardworking person spending your hard-earned dollars on food. So I was known as a really, really tough critic when I was there in Hawaii writing for the Honolulu Advertiser newspaper. So, my responsibility was to you, my reader, than it was to the restaurants. So
yeah.
If a restaurant deserved a bad review or a few bad words, then I would sock it to them.
Yeah, so they knew you were reputable. They could trust what you were writing.
That's real talk there. We try not to limit, like Nick's mentioned several times, we try not to limit or edit out adult language. We try to stay away from politics for obvious reasons, religion, things like that. But we're very proud to say that we're able to say what we want to say. We don't have to pull back. And I think that kind of comes through because, you're lighthearted, you like to have a good time, but you've had success in that. Talk to us a little bit about, if you lined, in my world, you're educating me into your world. Talk to me a little bit about if you were at a competition or you were a critic, either way, and let's say there's 20 people from all over the United States and you've kind of climbed that ladder, but talk to me a little bit about your style versus maybe the typical style of critiquing that situation.
My style is probably more going for the funny bone and the heartstrings than it is going for the jugular. And that's always been my approach and my concept, be the nice guy you are. And if shit hits the fan and I got to step up, I'll do that. but that's not my place. That's not my typical place.
What's the one dish that you think that everyone should learn to cook? If they were going to just cook one dish, what's the one dish you think everyone should learn?
For at home?
Or just in general, but yeah, but sure. Yeah, let's say at home.
Well, I think that, many of the famous chefs from years past would say chicken. Learn to cook chicken. Because you can eat chicken more than anything else in your life.
Yeah.
I happen to love chicken thighs with the skin on, and I roast them.
Me too. All the flavor.
It's one of the easiest things in the world to do if you know the tips and the tricks. It's like you could take two different people, a person who doesn't cook and a person who can cook. They could have the same ingredients, but the person who can cook, who understands the techniques, that's all the difference in the world. So even with given all the same tools, the person who knows the technique is always going to have a better dish.
It's so much easier to learn to cook now with YouTube and all those kind of things. My mom always talks about how when her and my dad first got married, she was a horrible cook. Like she had to learn through trial and error, but now you can just jump on YouTube University and you could, learn all kinds of dishes and all that. But I'm sure that with experience comes the details, and the perfection.
I hesitate to say the story because I rarely cook, anything, great, but my favorite dish to cook is actually boneless, skinless chicken breast. And then I put lemon pepper seasoning on it, lemon juice, and then it's got to have that glass top on it where just a little bit of the steam rises throughout it. And for some reason, when you eat that, it tastes really good because it holds in the original juice from it, and then it mixes with that flavoring, and that's been a favorite of mine. And then the reason I told that story was not to impress you with my lack of
with your
culinary artist is, have you ever tried chicken of the woods, actually?
Chicken of the woods? No, I'm not familiar with that. Tell me.
Chicken in the woods is actually a fungus-like mushroom that grows on the side of trees, and if you cut it off with a knife and you cut it the same way that you would cut a boneless, skinless chicken breast, and you prepare it exactly the same, the texture and the taste is almost identical to chicken, although it's a fungus and or a mushroom. It's kind of a
That's
Midwest
interesting.
thing.
Do you see colors after you?
I think I've heard of that before.
And it's not anything weird like Nick's asking. It's not anything weird like that. But it's actually
colors.
It's actually $25 to $40 a pound. So if you go out and you're in a woods and you find it, you can find a couple $100 worth of it in a small area. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, if I saw a mushroom in the wild and I munched on it, I would be seeing colors.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right. But are you a pretty healthy guy in general? Do you try to eat healthy along? I mean, I'm sure you want to indulge from time to time, but do you try to eat fairly healthy?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in these last few years, I've become kind of a metabolic health coach for a lot of people. So that's kind of what's really near and dear to me. So I teach people about how to maybe reverse type 2 diabetes, how to lose weight, how to eat keto and low carb and things like that. And that's kind of what I do myself.
Yeah, I may have to be getting some of that advice. Yeah, I've done the keto thing for about 3 years. And, it's one of those things like you plateau after a little while and then it's just, you kind of forget how you started in the first place, but a lot of that weight comes off so fast doing keto. But then
it does. It's probably the healthiest single diet you can have because everyone's got the possibility of having metabolic health breakdown, and eating no carbs will allow you to live longer, reduce inflammation, lose the unnecessary weight that you're carrying around, maybe fight certain cancers and a lot along those lines. I'm a proponent of that, and I practice strict keto 9 months a year, and then I let myself go to hell for 3 months a year.
I like that. So you kind of give yourself, instead of a cheat day, you get a cheat quarter.
Right, and I'm just now starting the keto 9 months, so I do that every year. So
what's your process?
October, November, December, I'm out of control.
That's the time, right? What's your process for creating dishes that balance both flavor and wellness?
You really want to, use the proper and appropriate spices if you're going to be on low carb and keto and so on, but it's really kind of like a mental exercise to be able to do that because it's very difficult for people to eat. It's a very specifically small category of foods that you're going to be eating, but you just want to be able to, you're kind of in that not living to eat mode, but the eating to live mode.
Yes.
And so I'm happy being there because, I've had history in my past. I had type 2 once upon a time, and I was 60 pounds heavier once upon a time. So now I can turn people on to my experience of helping them lose the weight and helping them reverse their type 2 diabetes. Half of our audience, guys, right now are obese or have type 2.
And don't realize it.
Don't realize it, perhaps. So I'm kind of on a mission of trying to help people with that.
I love that. That's inspirational. On a very personal level, I'm an athlete. I can get up and down the courts and still do stuff, but it's just that barrier of being, that 30 to 40 extra pounds. If I shedded that, I'm not telling you I'd be elite, but mid-40s, I would be more elite than I currently am. Not be sluggish, have additional energy, be more mentally focused. So I 100% agree with you. And quite frankly, for 35 years of my life, that's all I did. Now I've kind of gotten out of that swing, but hearing stuff like this, and it's a very mid-level approach. Like you're not professor level with me. If you wanted to, you could be, but you're not elementary level. You're kind of in between. So I think I'm liking what I'm hearing actually by that, to pay an ultimate compliment with that.
Jason, I would totally be happy to be your coach if you wanted to get onto the keto and lose that weight so you can get back on the court and be the elite guy you want to be. And I'll give you recipes. I'll tell you how to do stuff to make it taste good. And, give me a month. And if you don't see drastic results in a month, then go your way and do your thing with your skinless, boneless stuff. But give me the first month and I'll help you out.
I got to take that challenge because to be 100% accountable to you, I was mean and clean for about 70 days. I'm not going to go into detail on the show, but to make a long story short, my wife just the other day found those strips that, I don't know, the
ketos.
Yeah. You can kind of tell where you're at, your body at any given time.
pH, yeah.
And she's just like, do you need these? And I kind of took it as a personal thing that when she said that, I'm going to use those again, as opposed to, just chuck the box out. So we can kind of talk off record, but I like that motivation and accountability. I like the fact that I'm bold enough to say it to the audience at large because I want to see that, because I've noticed that, even seeing yourself weekly on the podcast, I'm not saying I'm really fluctuating, but I'm just stagnant. I'm just not.
Oh, I've definitely noticed.
Not getting to where I need to be.
Yeah.
So.
We should do that, Jason. We should come up with a plan and we can be accountable by telling the audience about it. We'll mention that Matt put it together for us, and we can just kind of like track it over the next month or two. That'd be fun. We should definitely do that.
Challenge accepted. I'll even raise my right hand so the crowd sees it. So I'm
okay. We're there.
I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome.
We'll make it happen. You'll be lean and mean before you know it.
I'm ready for it. So let me ask you a question. So I've traveled, It's a random geographic jaunt for you, but just live in my world for just a second. I've traveled to the Bahamas before, and I've told Nick this story, a phenomenal story. I've been around athletes my whole life, not a lot of musicians, but just to say this, the guy that actually was finding the conch shells in the ocean that was making the salads, and there's a benefit for the conch salads, if you kind of know that. I won't say it, but there's a known ingredient in it. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that guy was almost that famous athlete. And the Bahamas, for me, brought the ocean back to life with the cuisine. Talk to me a little bit about something that Hawaii may be off the beaten path or living there that you've gravitated towards that the normal person wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards or know about the cuisine there in Hawaii.
Well, sushi is really big here because we have a big Japanese and Asian culture. So that's first and foremost. So you better learn to understand how your taste buds are going to wrap themselves around the flavors from, all over the world, primarily Southeast Asia and the Orient. The warm water fish is different than the fish you might get from cold waters. Cold water fish has a layer of fat around them and they're a little bit more fishy, but they have wonderful flavor. Warm water fish that we have here is a more lean fish and the flavors are completely different from the other waters where fish comes from around the world. As far as Hawaiian cuisine, once upon a time, Hawaii really didn't have all the spices at their use. So they had to deal with just the flavors of whatever grew here, which wasn't very much. And so things are very simple, like wild boar. So you bury wild boar in tea leaves and banana leaves, and you dig a hole and you cook it in the ground, and that's called kalua pork or kalua pig. And it's basically like a smoked pork shoulder that you guys might have, but here we do it with the entire pig. So that's very popular in Hawaii as well. And Hawaiian food is extremely simple stuff. But as checkers is difficult for some people, it's really quite the simple game. Food in Hawaii is quite the simple game also. It's hard to master checkers. It's also hard to master simple flavors. But if you were to come here, I would take you out for all the wonderful Vietnamese, Chinese, warm water fish from Hawaii, the Kahlua pork. Of course, Spam is really big here. We're one of the largest consumers of Spam in the world. And I know people scratch their head about that, but that's really, really a popular and important snack here.
I get that every day, though. I just hit delete and take it to my email, right?
Right, exactly.
Sorry.
It's
Just had to throw
version.
that out there. Just had to throw that. So
During that quarter that we were talking about, the October, November, December, that you just kind of indulge, what's your favorite comfort food that you just want to relax and maybe like sit and eat and watch TV?
A gigantic pile of spaghetti and meatballs with all the fixins. So that brings me back to my childhood, as does stuffed cabbage. These are things that, I grew up with when I used to follow my mom around the kitchen and just enjoy the aroma and the color and the flavor and the food architecture on top of the plate and all the things that make food so special aside from sitting across the table from your loved ones. So it was that whole total experience. So when I'm able to overindulge, I'll be doing my pies, and I'll be doing the pastries, and I'll be making all of those old foods that my mom used to make and that I fell in love with. So it'll be too much and too often, but it's just for 3 months. It's all I'll allow myself.
On a side note, I'm just interested. I was noticing that we've had a couple of storytellers on the show, and we've had a couple of food critics, and I've noticed there's a very close similarity between both of them, because you're very descriptive, when you talk about the food and the, you try to engage all the senses when you're telling the story. I love that. Do you think that's from being a food critic and your writing background?
I don't know which came first in that scenario. I think that maybe colorful people or creative people
that makes
have a lot more things going on related to the senses. So I really don't know if that was first, but I would hazard a guess that it was just my style of being the person I am before I started, getting into the food. But I've been cooking forever, for 60 years now.
Have you noticed that, Jason?
I have actually. So I got to use some adult humor here. So I got to say, I'm going to piggyback, since you already talked about that earlier, with that question. But here's the thing. If I were to look at your bio and review this, I can't say this any other way, that it's almost like you picked and chose what you wanted to do, saw yourself succeeding in that. And man, like, I'm sitting here like trying to say this tactfully, but like, what a fun life. I mean, what's not to like about being in music, being in culinary, taking care of yourself, traveling the world? Man, I really got to tip my cap, because not only have you done it at a high level, you've reinvented yourself and you've done it at high levels and other things. So really tip my cap to you there. So it wasn't really a question. It's more of a statement, because that's some cool stuff. So help me with one crossroads that I have. It's easy to live that. In your world, it's easier to live probably the 9 months. The 3 months is fun. As hard as it is to hear, I'm the guy that probably lives in the 3 months, 12 months. So how do you kind of flip that switch back? Let me give you an example just real quick. Prior to COVID, I was at a place in which I could go into a salad bar and pay by the pound. So what did I do? I would be conservative with my portions. I would be very good with my protein. My reward once a week was chili that wasn't, to do with the salad, but I was trimming up. I was lean. I was feeling great. 67 days in a row that I had the choice, 66 were that salad. Feeling lean and mean, feeling great. But unfortunately, I get off that wagon, and then I'm just saying it out loud. It's ranch dressing on extra pizza. So
the culinary delight there.
if you kind of peel that back in, what's the emphasis that you would give somebody to say, hey, start in a week, start in 10 days, but once you start, how do you get into that starting block and start to run that race with taking care of yourself and kind of doing that? Because I kind of need that on a selfish level for myself.
Well, it's interesting that you said what you went through, and I'm just wondering, Jason, if that was a financially related or motivated operation for 67 days. Was it because the food was costed out on a per pound basis that you felt you couldn't be the real eater that Jason is?
That was actually just a random thing. I said that because it was just it was kind of a weird setup. Like I could have all the salads, all the extra stuff. It was just charged by the pound. I guess a better way to rate that was it wasn't prepackaged, pre-priced, if you will. So I could have some variety. I'm not real big on eating the same thing like day after day. So that's kind of, it wasn't really to save money, but it was cheap. I mean, I'm throwing it out. It was much cheaper than fast food and much healthier during that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think that it really takes persistence and determination. Those two words and the energies that they bring with them has always been my biggest thing in my life. So when people ask me, hey, Matt, what do I do? How can I do that? I just say, you got to get into that mindset, that headspace where you're ready to be persistent and determined, because someone can tell you and for years and years and years what you should do. But if you're not ready for it, you won't be able to accomplish that. So a lot of the things that I try to motivate people with is just telling them stories about myself or about others, about successful operations, and see if that helps increase the persistence and determination side of your personality. Once you're there, then I just hold your hand and help you get there. But I think that everybody has to make their own mind up.
Great feedback there. Great Mosaic conversation. Now, we've talked about the topics that you've excelled at that we see. Give me a quick statement on what you do away from anything that we've talked about tonight. Go in a completely different direction. If you're not concentrating on food, music, being around people, what are you doing on a random Saturday afternoon there in Honolulu?
I like to watch sports. We don't have any professional sports here in Hawaii.
Surfing.
So, right, there you go.
Got the rainbows. Got the rainbows, right?
So that's true. That's true. So, I like sports, but professional NFL and MLB is big. I love my cats. As a matter of fact, here, I'll connect something that you just asked. The cats are a little bit off the beaten path for what we've been talking about, but I cook for them. So every morning I make scrambled eggs for my cats.
Nice.
And every night, every day, throughout day and night, because they eat constantly like the way I used to. But I make them chicken. I make them chicken in a pressure cooker, and then I process it, meaning I get the bones out of it, and then I chop it up with a little bit of powdered nutrients, and I keep that in the fridge for them. So whenever they are hungry, which is always, I try to give them daddy chicken instead of the commercial stuff, and so they'll live a healthier and happier and longer life.
That's cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. But before we get, where everybody can find you and your social media and all that, I wanted to do like a few rapid fire questions. Okay?
Fantastic. Sounds
all
great.
Right. So, sweet or savory?
Wow. Thai.
Dream travel destination for foodies?
Barcelona.
Most overrated food trend?
Avocado toast.
One ingredient you can't live without?
White wine.
Worst food-related...
See, that's not only goes in the food, but it goes in the chef.
Yeah. Worst food-related disaster you've ever had in the kitchen? I think you already answered that with the Robin Williams thing, but...
I did, yeah. Setting a house on fire of a movie star is like a big deal.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, you know what? Where can we, if somebody wants to find you, because if I'm watching this, I'm going to want to be like, hey, what else can you tell me about keto and all that? So if somebody wanted to find you or wanted to listen to your podcast, do you have a book? Did I see that you have a book? Or
I do. Okay. I wrote the Ultimate Eater's Guide, Hawaii edition, after the COVID shit show happened. Yeah. And I felt like I couldn't feed, educate, and entertain people anymore face-to-face like I had done for 16 years. So I wrote the book. And so that's available if you go to my website, Ultimate Eater's Guide, Hawaii Edition. And one of my websites is Hawaii Food Tours. That's where I did all that great stuff with people. So you can get the book there. And if you go to lovelife.com, you can check out my podcast or YouTube. It's called 50 Tastes of Gray.
Yeah, I love that. Love that title.
I want to send you off with 2 points of edification. Then I'm going to flip the mic back over to Nick, and he's going to kind of send you out formally like we always do standard, on a podcast. So I'm going to ask you a very, very heartfelt question. It'll almost bring me to tears, and I'm not meaning to do this, but I'm going to ask you a very important question. And I want you to be as blunt as you can about this. I've got a family member, okay, that has diabetes. And I have a very strong opinion because I've been with this family member a lot. He's my best friend. I'm going to say that out loud. I'm seeing a tremendous amount of diet. I don't want to say saccharine. I don't know what's in the diet, but there's an ingredient that I know is kind of a buzz phrase, if you know. I don't know exactly what it is, but here's what I'm going to ask. I know for a fact the water intake is very low, and I know for a fact the diet soda intake is very high, almost to where I think it's way more than the water intake. Can you selfishly, I guess, or unselfishly give me some advice or motivation? Because I know that that's not right. That's never going to work for a person that has diabetes. Can you give an unedited bones, like really try to make an impact? Because I want this person to hear that. So I'm not the guy that's the expert. You're more the expert, if that makes sense. Can I have you maybe address that for me? And then I'm going to formally send you off with Nick.
Well, my blood response would be, you got to stop with all that shit. And if you need help, you need to get somebody in there. And I would be happy to help that person also. But yeah, you can't be doing processed foods. You can't be doing sugar, grains, fruit, any of the, starchy vegetables, breads, none of that stuff. So it's time to get together, unless you want to die early.
Yeah, I've always thought when it came to, because I've battled with, yo-yo diets and weight my whole life. And so I've always thought that of all the addictions, food is the toughest one because you can't just stop eating. Like with other substances or whatever, you can stop and live, but you can't just stop food. So like that's one thing that I've always thought was the most difficult thing about dieting and about trying to lose weight. That, and then we're trying to replace it with something, like trying to replace that time frame, your habits, what you're used to doing. Like my thing is ice cream. So like I like to, at night, and the worst time to eat, but at nighttime, it tastes so good. I like to just sit, like at the end of the day and enjoy, a pint of, I do keto, but still keto ice cream. You know what I mean? Like I just love it.
My 2 points of edification. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Nick, I have great news for you. I make the best keto ice cream ever. No carbs, incredible flavor, incredible aroma. It will get you and your mouth coated so well that you'll just say, why didn't I know about this earlier?
All we got to do is send them some dry ice and get it shipped over here, Nick. That's all we got to do. So my 2 points of edification for you is this. Not only were you educational and on a very personal level with us, you're easy to talk to. You've done a lot of great things. I know that's going to be a Mosaic 1 point there. Second point is I think your sense of humor and the way you live your life, it's inspirational, because I tell Nick this all the time. I used to laugh and be the person that everybody would come to when somebody was down. You've shown me that side, that it's okay to be serious. It's okay to be razor's edge. It's okay to be funny. And I think that was a takeaway that I have through our interaction with you. So I tip my cap to it. A much continued success. I'm going to say it right now for Nick. You would be a no-brainer for a return episode with one more critic. So then that way you guys can share some similarities, share some differences. And let's not argue, but let's already preset this to where it's an open conversation. Nobody's getting mad. And let's just have another critic on from a different part of the United States. We'll introduce and make that happen. I think it's a no.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious who we're thinking of, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it'd be great. You guys would absolutely love each other because you have a lot of the similarities, and he's into the psychology of food, and he's also a food critic. So I think
Let's already connect it together. His name is Jared Gleaton. The reason we're doing that for you is because I want you to meet him, familiarize yourself. I think you guys would hit it off well, and he's doing some great things as well. So then that way you guys are already kind of building that camaraderie, and then when you're on, it'll be nice to kind of banter back and forth a little.
Guys, I'm going to say something right now that is going to please you to no end. You ready?
Yeah.
Jared was a guest on my show about a month ago.
Nice.
And so I know him.
Nice.
And that would be great. It would be wonderful to do a dual thing with Jared, because I dig his style and his background and all that. And he's just a real fun guy.
He is. And he's so friendly. I mean, he's become a good friend of ours. Like he'll text us Merry Christmas and stuff like that. He's just become a real good friend.
I could see why you guys would be, because you're cut out of the same thread, just kind and hoping the best for each other and doing some cool things in culinary and
I just heard from him earlier tonight. He sent me an email.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That makes me smile, man. That's
He's
awesome.
a great guy. He said he thanked me for putting him into my 2024 recap show, which just dropped today on 50 Tastes of Grey. So a couple of nice bits with him was on that.
That's super. That makes me smile because we're blessed with talking to people of all lifestyles and connecting them. And I've always been a sports guy, but it's so much cooler to have an open conversation where you're just having fun and you're enlightened by that conversation. It doesn't matter what background you're from. If you're from sports or non-sports, you like sports, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of commonalities there. So I'm going to have Nick kind of give you one last opportunity here. And once again, thanks again. Very enjoyable.
All I would say is
Thank you, Jason.
We're definitely leaving the conversation a little bit hungrier than we were before, because all anytime there's descriptions of food and flavor and all that stuff, when you talk about the ice cream, I'm about ready to go find me some keto ice cream.
I'll teach you how to do that. It'll take you
Awesome.
5 minutes and it'll last your whole life.
Okay, fantastic. Well, to our listeners, make sure you check out 50 Tastes of Grey and follow Matthew for more of his culinary adventures and creative wisdom. And until next time, eat well, live boldly, and keep those minds curious. Thanks again, Matthew, for being on.
Aloha, guys. Thanks.
Aloha.
Thanks.